Hey everybody, in today's video I want to be reacting to Whatever's YouTube video. If you haven't heard of Whatever, they used to be a very big YouTube channel that did fun comedic pranks in the public, and all of a sudden after a while and getting over 3 million subscribers, they just kind of went dark and disappeared for 3 years. And the person who started and owns and operates it, he recently did a video kind of explaining what happened and him coming back. I'm not going to actually show the overlay of the video here because it's a long 30-minute video, and I've done those before and they don't get a lot of views, plus they're just like very time consuming, and it turns into like an hour-long reaction, and nobody has time to watch that. Instead, I'll just do my quick recap and my thoughts and memories about Whatever. So I know some people probably haven't heard of them, especially because now the YouTube ecosystem is so huge. There's hundreds of thousands of channels to choose from, and you can't keep up with all of them. But back when YouTube was significantly smaller a few years ago, there was a phase where a lot of these social experiment or prank videos were very, very popular. Now, some of them got too edgy or rude and offensive, or they almost incited violence or bad reactions, and I had a bad taste for those. But I think Whatever was one that was always fairly wholesome, and this was a time when they would just rack up some of the largest amount of views on YouTube. So it was enjoyable to watch. I think he would do more wholesome ones to a degree, or at least ones that had a certain level of respectability to it. Like nothing was really pushing the line, like almost forcing people to fight or anything like that. It was more so like fun little things, and I think I just really enjoyed the channel. So enough about that. What did he say? What happened? Why did he disappear when someone has 3 million subscribers? He quickly summarizes it up and then breaks it out in a video to basically a long list of horrible negative events that happened in his life, and I feel bad for him and I wish him well. But that included 3 of his friends committing suicide, 3 lawsuits. He also had all sorts of other stuff happening. The California fires evacuating him from his home, his grandmother dying, his long-term girlfriend breaking up, and so on and so forth. And I think it still relates to this personal development channel because he concludes by saying that despite all these tough times, 2 books did help him through, and he would be a lot worse without these books. And they were personal development themed books. 12 Rules for Life with Jordan Peterson, a new guy who's come out in the last 2 years that a lot of people have been suggesting that I check out and cover. And then another book on self-development and living life. So I think I kind of want to cover a little bit of all the negative things that happened. I think he even listed more, but I just want to touch on some of my thoughts on them and go into a bit more detail because I think it's a bit of a learning lesson, and it's a bit of a lesson on living a better life. So I think first and foremost, I definitely was kind of brought back to reality a bit because, this is a guy that I thought maybe had it made to an extent. But just because someone has a very large number of followers on social media, and it doesn't mean that they have these incredible lives. I definitely had this assumption that now you have to fight and look into in more detail. But I assume like anyone who's hit 1 million subscribers, they've got to they've got all this money coming in, they're famous, and they get to do what they want for a living. Like, what else can you ask for? But when you really look behind the surface here, he had a lot of issues. He also mentioned how YouTube for years now has basically just been like taking down his content. He got hacked, but also YouTube's been demonetizing him, age restricting his content, removing his content, because his content is just not something that they like to see on their platform, that advertisers would like. So, even though he was more on the wholesome side, in my opinion, like he did a lot of like fun little sketches, you know, where I think the latest one he did was he was like holding up a sign with at a protest that said "My arms are tired." So it was rather unfortunate, but I think that probably cut in a lot to any type of money he made off YouTube, and especially if you're relying on ads, you need like millions of views to get anything sustainable. So that kind of sucked, and it's not always apples to apples. You don't just because they have a lot of subscribers doesn't mean that they're doing well. I think enough of them do well that it seems like all of them should, but that definitely wasn't the case. And so I think that's a reality check. Just because you think someone's life is grand and amazing, this guy, he's living on a beach in California, doesn't mean that that's actually the case. And clearly, it's just a great example. You assume they have such better lives than you, but then when you look on the surface, man, he went through a lot. Girlfriend dying, grandma dying, long-term girlfriend breaking up, all this YouTube stuff, taking his stuff down. It was really a mess. And there's tons of other stuff I didn't even mention that he said he went through. He actually went through a number of injuries, some from I think surfing and stuff, where he broke his back and he had to go through surgery. And a lot of those injuries have basically prevented him from even filming like he used to. He can't do the things he used to because it seems like he basically has to move around in very safe ways, sit down most of the day. And so that's something I think some people may have just lucked out in a lot of ways without realizing. You see all these travel YouTubers traveling the world, but you don't see the fact that they lucked out and maybe narrowly avoided injury many times, whereas other people got injured and they couldn't do what they do anymore. Or maybe they still have all that mobility, but behind the scenes they are working night and day to secure those brand deals and pitch people and ask for stuff just for a free night stay at a lodge. So that's one thing. He also covered some of the lawsuits, and that was very interesting. It was interesting to see how much stuff can go wrong. And the first one, his dog really got like injured, like all these lesions on his neck, because the vet place that he went to, which he really, really liked, put the collar on the wrong way. The flaps were supposed to point out rather than in. And it caused all these lesions and wounds that required a lot of post-treatment to heal. Unfortunately, at first, the vet agreed to pay the $1,000 in the follow-up treatments to heal those wounds, which were very graphic. But then it seems like the owner or the head honcho, she rescinded that, and it went back and forth with insurance and stuff, and it ultimately ended with him, out of principle more than money, filing this big lawsuit, which quickly ended in his favor. And that just really sucks. And of course, with a lot of these things, it did seem like life really just took it out on him. But, that's just his side of the story. And we may never get a objective sense of the other person's side of the story. And maybe, as in many things in life, there's a mix of gray in there. It's not all black and white, and he was not always potentially in the right. But it did seem that way in a lot of his side of the stories. And if that was the case, I definitely feel for him. It definitely seemed like, at least for the dog story, he seemed to be on the right side of things and just kind of screwed over a bit. I would have probably not been assertive enough to push for a lawsuit. I may have just taken it and gotten mad and left a bad review. But, it seems like he did end up getting the money back, and they ruled in his favor pretty quickly. So at least that was good, but another hectic, crazy thing to have to go through that probably took out a lot of time from his day. And I wonder, because I'm currently studying negotiation books and psychology books, I wonder if he had maybe communicated or negotiated in a better way, it wouldn't have seemed as hostile and he may have come out in a better way. But who knows? Maybe not. I don't know these vets. Maybe they were evil villains. Or maybe not. Maybe they were. It was just a misunderstanding and they didn't want to pay that extra bill. But that's very unfortunate that happened. And a bunch of other lawsuits happened. I think the other one I saw was his MCN, which is, I guess, the network that manages big YouTubers. And it's a network that manages a lot of other big YouTubers, Matt, Pat, Smosh, and so forth. It shut down. It was bankrupt, basically. And basically, a lot of the profits he would have gotten, he never received. And they basically went straight up bankrupt, just shut off the blue, and basically stole $1.7 million from creators. I've always had a skeptical view of MCNs, but if my channel did get big enough, I may have been suckered into joining one of them. I know a lot of influencers did. And they basically, from what I could tell, take a cut of your income, your ads income, for management services. And for sometimes this is worth it, sometimes it's not. And that they've always had a very sketchy reputation. But I know there's some good ones. I know PewDiePie is on one, and that seems to have served him well for like 10 years. So I guess, I don't know, some people lucked out, some people didn't. But that just really sucks. And then, I guess the third one, this is the one that I think was maybe the most interesting. He had a friend, who's now his ex-friend, who signed in on a 12-year lease for that apartment. About 2 or 3 months in, that friend decided he wanted to move to LA again, or move to LA for the first time. So, even though he had signed a contract to stay for 12 years, he basically ignored that, made no effort to find a replacement, and off he went. And that was that. That really kind of sucked. But, it seems like, stuff like that happens. And apparently, they basically filed a huge lawsuit to fix it. And the long and short of it is, he won the lawsuit, but then the guy just declared bankruptcy. And he had all his credits, all the debt he had, cleared, including the $10,000 he still owed. And according to him, the sad part was that basically, unfortunately, on his Instagram or whatever, or somehow he found out that his friend, even during that bankruptcy declaration legal filing, he went on a trip to Miami, he went on a trip to Coachella, and then another trip to Las Vegas. So he was basically living it up, despite all this crap. And once again, it just goes to show that, just because of what you see on Instagram or social media doesn't necessarily mean that they really have their finances or life together. Many people are faking it and just really broke. They're really broke. They make it seem like they're rich, that they're traveling the world, that they're living this wealthy life, but it's all fake, and then they're actually broke, or they're living something else, or they're unhappy. And so, for me at least, I try and live below my means. I mean, all my videos are in this very basic room, and I've definitely stood my ground and said, like, hey, I don't like showing off and doing that for those reasons, because I don't like to propel that sense. I remember I actually posted, I told this older man that I used to work with, and that I'm just gonna photo dump my stuff on the social media, and it's just going to be a mishmash of things that I want to save, and I'm going to treat it as a storage place because I don't like to show off. And his response was like, "Oh, it's okay to show off." And I didn't want to be rude and push it further, but what I wanted to tell him was, no, it's not. It's not. You're new to social media. I know you really like Facebook and all that stuff now, but that's not the case. I think there's way too much showing off, and it creates these unhealthy, negative dynamics where people assume, oh, this guy's living it up, and they get very unhappy about that. So, I think the long and short of it is, wow, that really sucks. That guy was really screwed over, and I think part of it's just about, choosing someone you can trust, which is always hard to do. But also some of it is just learning lessons that you sometimes have to kind of eat and live by and do something with. And basically, like, he's basically saying he had to pay for his friend, and it was $10,000 extra he had to pay for that place because his friend bailed on him. My question is, like, why couldn't you find another person in that time? I wonder, like, it's probably a fairly high demand place, but he probably has his reasons for that. Are they legitimate reasons? Are they excuses? I don't know. But I think whether or not you're skeptical of what he claims or not, you can't argue that the amount of things that happen, some of which are just out of his control. His grandma dying, there's not much you can do about that. And long distance relationships ending, that happens. That's a part of life. Or long term, not long distance, long term relationships ending, that's a part of life. It happens. Everyone goes through it at some point. And it's sometimes out of your control. California fires, you can't control that unless you can control the weather. And so when all this stuff happens, I think it comes down to some things that I'm sure Jordan Peterson's book recommends, although I've never read it. And these are deep, almost spiritual philosophies. It goes beyond personal development to living a good life and spiritual, even religious philosophies. One of the biggest ones being, and this I think is more Buddhist, but the whole idea of that with life comes suffering, and you can't avoid that. You shouldn't avoid suffering. You should just accept it as part of life, and you should still be able to find a certain level of happiness, a certain level of peace, a certain level of joy within that suffering. And just because there's suffering doesn't mean that it always has to equal or outweigh the positive. So there you have it. I think the big message here really comes down to that pursuit that we all have, which is to achieve that happiness, that good life, despite the obstacles that life has brought us. And for this man, one could argue he's had more troubles in the last couple years than many of us, despite us sometimes assuming, oh, he's a YouTuber and he has a good life. Behind the scenes, maybe a lot of crap has gone down. And so, it's about what can we do about that? What can we focus on? How can we prevent that or overcome that and deal with it better? And that's the eternal question. I think there's some things that we can all do to improve on that. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I have learned a lot from reading hundreds of books on personal development, studying thousands of videos on it. And I think, if I could tell him some little bit of my 2 cents, obviously I don't know all the details and context. I don't know his real story or real situation. But I think, some of those things about accepting, preparing for negative events as they come, and rolling with them and accepting them and dealing as best you can with them, but also, acknowledging that they happen and moving forward. That's part of it. For me, I think negative events do happen. Not always as bad as his, but they do happen. And I don't claim to have a worse life or a better life or whatnot, but they happen for me too, and probably he's had it worse. But when they do happen, I'm prepared for them because I'm never thinking that will never happen to me, or it'll just be peaches and cream forever. And so when they do, it's tough. Sometimes I think a few things have happened. To give you an example, that can really kind of crystallize some of these thoughts. For me, I think there's various areas of life where crap just happens. I, as I've mentioned before, I was scammed of a Pokemon card that was a pretty hefty cost, and basically I mailed it to the right address, but then he was like, "Oh, ship it to this one instead, because that's actually where I live." So I did that without changing the specifications on PayPal, and it cost me, and that really sucked. But you live and learn. It sucks, but it's okay. Money is something that you can lose, but you can get back. Whether it's $10,000, $1,000, $100. My card was $150, which hurt, but didn't knock me over. And even if it was more, even if I lost all my money, you can get it back. Time is something you'll never get back. So I was able to kind of recuperate from that and learn from it and know. And although I was angry and so forth, I was able to move forward and just kind of learn from that experience and learn what not to do next time and improve and enhance my mind. And when you invest in yourself and your skill set, as I always recommend, even if you lose it all, you have that skill set to get it back. And I've written articles on personal finance, and I think those investments are going to pay off in the long run. We mentioned that guy who was basically living his life on credit, trying to live this exceptional life, going to Coachella and all this stuff, moving to LA. But he was living above his means and using a lot of debt to do that, and potentially just continuously declaring bankruptcy and destroying his credit. And in the short term, maybe he'll fool a few people, maybe he'll live a good life for a while, but even then, there's always that uncertainty, that lack mentality, because he's always living on credit. And in the long run, he's never going to accumulate significant wealth unless he completely changes his behaviors and mindset. And that's why I like personal finance YouTubers like Stephen Graham, who actually have a large following but are preaching sound, humble, simple, and sometimes kind of unsexy, barren, living below your means practices. And although it's not always flashy or appropriate or amazing, he's found a way of doing it that garners him a large following while still teaching humble, simple practices. And that's the stuff that's going to really build that exceptional wealth over time. And investing in your skill set, your abilities, is going to keep you moving, keep you inflation proof, because you always have something to offer, versus another situation where you don't have much, and if you lose much, then you're screwed. So I think in the long term, that guy, although in the short term he seems to be screwing people over, living life on credit, faking it, I think in the long term he's never going to get far. He's never going to build a massive level of success unless he changes his ways. And so I think that's part of it. In terms of like things out of your control in life, that's another area that I think it's important to just let go of. You have to know what you can and can't control, as the saying goes, and have the serenity to know the difference and accept it and then move on. Because why worry about it then if it's just going to keep causing you unhappiness? And so crap does happen. Crap's happened to me. I've known people who have also gone through very tough things, or attempted very self-harm things, or things that have happened to me that just really sucks. And we're talking like car breaks down, yet another hefty car bill, and then, people telling me this and that about how much it should cost, and I don't know who to trust. And then the second and third opinion says something different. And then all sorts of other things happening, people who are just going through tough times, and that affected me, and all this other stuff happening. And I think when I reflect on how I dealt with it, I'm proud of myself because I was able to roll with a lot of that stress, oftentimes at once. And then career stress is coming in as well, and then all this stuff happening, and then, uncertain job security and prospects. A lot of that happened to me, and I was able to take that, and it wasn't easy. I used a lot of stress reduction techniques that I've mentioned in other videos, but knowing at the end of the day and telling myself, hey, I'm happy, or I'm healthy, I'm still alive, I'm not injured, or really like prevented from moving forward in my life. I still have my body, I still have my mind, and I'm living below my means to an extent, so it's not going to be devastating, and I have a skill set that I continue to cultivate. And when I have all those things together, I think I move forward, because at the end of the day, I'll figure something out. Hefty car payment for repair, I'll figure something out to make it happen. Job prospects, work on yourself, keep developing. And I guess I just focused on what I could control, what I could do, what I could improve. And I knew it was the effort, it was the testing, the tweaking, the putting that, what I could control, which is all my effort into it, that really ended up helping me a lot. Because that, by focusing on that, by being grateful and appreciative of what I still have, the most important things, we're talking, my family's still healthy, I'm still alive, that I'm able to move forward. And as long as I do what I can, there's nothing else you can do. If you put your best foot forward and you do the best you can, there's no use worrying about anything else that's outside of your control. And so that's really down to it. With long-term relationships ending, it sucks. It really sucks, but it happens. It's almost a rite of passage, something that many people end up going through, and it will hurt, and it does suck, and it may last for a while. I mean, one of my favorite songs lately is Mike Posner's song called "Move On," which ironically goes through very similar things. He went through a lot as well. His friend Avicii died. His long-term girlfriend broke up with him. All sorts of other issues, and he wrote this song, and it was basically about how it really sucks. It hurts, and it'll hurt for a while, but he'll move on, and things will get back to normal. And the thing is, there's other women in the world, there's other people. You're still you. You learned, you've grown. You may even learn some things that will make you a better person, so that in your next relationship, it'll go a different way. But you're still you, and you're maybe better in certain ways. And there was a time when you were single before, and that's amazing. And now you can find someone else with billions of people in the world. So I think in many ways, if you look at Elon Musk or Richard Branson, you're never down unless you give up. There's an interview where Elon Musk was asked, your first rocket ship exploded, and like you lost all this money, and then one more failure, and then you'd be gone. Like, do you ever consider giving up? And he was like, no, I never give up. Never. Unless I'm physically incapacitated, like, I'm just never going to give up. And that's the thing. I think you always have a chance And even with this guy on credit, in a kind of bad way, he's not doing it in the right way, but just to show you, if worse comes to worse, you, as long as you still have your mind and your body, and you can still talk. I mean, even without your body, look at Stephen Hawking or Helen Keller. Stephen Hawking couldn't move neck down. There's still a way to live a good life, to contribute, to provide value and income. And this guy who walked out on a 12-year lease, he was able to come back from that, even though he was basically like zero net worth. He had nothing. He had just massive debt. So he declared bankruptcy, and worst comes to worst, fire destroys your house, right? You lose your girlfriend. All this crap happens, lawsuits, MCN, and let's say even worse, let's say his YouTube channel shuts down, which it didn't. He still has those 3 million subscribers. All those things happen, and he still has injuries on his body. Let's say he loses it all, and he's back to where he started, with basically no income, no YouTube channel, no career, maybe even no applicable skills that he's grown over the years. I hope that's not the case. That's something I always preach. You continue building. But let's say he loses that. He loses family members, long-term friends. He loses his dog, and he loses all his money he has, and he's starting from zero again. Despite all of that, that's where most people were out of college anyways. And you're still in one of the greatest countries of opportunity out there, the USA. Like a country that many people from other countries would die for to get into, to squeeze under a fence or whatnot to get into this country. And it's also something that a lot of entrepreneurs like Gary Vaynerchuk say they would love to start again, love to start over with from nothing. And they would love that climb, and they think they would still do well. And it's a place where a lot of college grads start. So I think a lot of people, once they obtain stuff, they cling on to it and they're scared of losing it. But I think the greatest security is just knowing or finding that confidence and that skill set. To know that if you lost it all, you can grow and build once again and just start over and start strong and start again, and you'd have something because you have the right financial habits, the right mindset, even the right skill sets. Probably more so than you did when you started off, when you knew nothing. I mean, even him, I think he wouldn't start from nothing. He has video production skills. He'd probably be able to build another YouTube channel fairly quickly to 100,000 subscribers, and so on and so forth. So I think this is not just a coaching session for him, but it's for all of you, to help you, and even for myself, because I think we can all improve on this, because negative events do happen, and it really does suck. I feel bad for him, but as I worry, as others worry about these things that seem so big, my hefty car payments, career uncertainty, and so forth. Because, by the way, I work a normal full-time job. This YouTube thing is just a side hobby, a very small side hobby for me in terms of income production, and all those other things, personal things going on in my life, so forth. It's something that we can overcome, we can manage, and even in worst case situations, when you lose it all, when you start from scratch, when you lose a lot of things of value, you realize that, hey, rock bottom is really not that bad. And with the right attitude, positive mindset, habits, which you can all learn and cultivate, you never know where you're going to go. I don't know who's watched all 35 minutes of my rant, but if you did, thank you for listening. I assume that you were very captivated on some level. Maybe you're related in your life, whatever. But please subscribe, please like, comment, and let me know how else I can serve you and improve your health, wealth, love, and happiness, and success, and live that good life. Thanks for watching. It's been my pleasure.